This is the Tri Swim Coach podcast, where the most difficult leg of the triathlon becomes your friend, leaving your struggles and your competition behind you. TrySwimCoach.com, helping you to laugh at the water.
Welcome to Tri Swim Coach. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 114. And I have Chris Haig on the other line. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Kevin?
Oh, it's going fantastic. We're finally out of winter here in Southern California.
Yeah, you're in, late fall back into spring and summer mode.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good times. Definitely, it encourages me to get more active. Like when it's raining, it was raining a ton here in the last month, and it's just I don't even want to go out of the house. It's because it doesn't really rain. Most years we get 10 inches of rain, and we were getting storms that would produce 6 inches in one storm. That's insane for us.
And you're not getting the worst of it. Northern California is getting slammed.
Oh yeah.
And just personally, there's nothing more dismal than rainy weather just to kind of squash your mood to going to the pool. It just it zaps your motivation to go out and go into the pool, especially if you have an outdoor pool and they kind of keep it unless there's lightning. If it's raining outside, even though you're getting into the water and you're going to get wet swimming, that's the last thing you want to do. It's just rainy weather. I'll take cold weather over rainy weather any day, especially when it comes to my motivation to swim.
Yeah, and with Wim Hof breathing, you don't have to worry about the cold anymore because you just do a few of those and then you get in the pool. I actually have been doing it, but the pool that I've been swimming at, it's indoors, but it's actually really cold. It's 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's too cold for me. But I do a few Wim Hof breathing. I do the deep or the kind of rapid breathing, and then I get in, and I don't notice it nearly as much as I would. So.
Yeah, my pool has gone up to high 80s, low 90s because people have been complaining it's been too cold. And I would say right after my I hop in, and it's great for hopping in because it makes hopping in bearable. But after 200 of the warm up, I am exhausted. It's drained my energy. And, sprints are out of the question. Anything over, 50 meter sprints are out of the question because, I can't swim fast when it's a hot tub.
Yeah.
It's just, Anyway.
And speaking of swimming fast, so we're going to talk about this article that we actually put out on Facebook, and it's called 5 Reasons You're Not Swimming Any Faster. And it's by a guy named Stephen Brandis. And but before that, I actually want to ask you. I actually want to give you a chance, Chris, to make your big announcement.
Yeah, I'm moving up to Canada in June. My wife got into a master's program up at Queen's University in Kingston. So we are moving in June to Kingston, Ontario. So I know we have a lot of Canadian listeners, especially in the Toronto area. So we're only about an hour and a half east of Toronto. So once I do move up in the summer, if you want to do a meetup, I know there's a bunch of open water swims in Lake Ontario. If you want to do a Tri-Swim Club open water swim meetup, more than welcome. My email is chris@triswimcoach.com. Send me an email. Love to meet up with you and have some good times in Canada.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Tri Swim Coach is going international. So, and I know, we always get a lot of Canadians on our webinars that we do and on our newsletter list. So that's awesome. I really, and I'm expecting you to develop the Canadian accent too when you're up there.
Hey, what was that? Sorry.
Oh, I don't know. It's about.
Sorry about that.
My Canadian accent sounds like a Minnesota accent because I spent some time there, and it sounds so similar to me. But that's probably a total insult to everyone involved.
Yeah. Speaking of cold water, I better get used to it up there.
Yeah, exactly. I have a whole different appreciation for cold.
A lot of Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah. But okay, well, cool. Let's get on to the article here that we're going to talk about. And this, this came across triathlonworld.com, but it was actually on Training Peaks. So I know a lot of people know about Training Peaks. I hadn't heard of this site, Triathlon World. They kind of, what is the word, procure articles? They kind of put articles that are around the internet and they put them on the site. So this is the one of the ones that they picked, and it's totally relevant to what we always, or what our site is about. And so I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it. And some of it is we agree with, and he made some really solid points and really helpful. And then other parts of it, we were going to do a little constructive criticism. So I'll start off with just the introduction part, and then we can kind of go back and forth from there. So the article is, I'm just going to read this first paragraph. You often hear the question, what is more important, technique or fitness? For the coaches who've actually worked with swimmers on deck, the answer is always technique. I have worked with hundreds of swimmers and have encountered a swimmer. I have never encountered a swimmer who wasn't limited by a glaring technical error. If technique is poor, it will certainly affect an athlete's ability to reduce their drag and increase their propulsion. You are always working on technique, but luckily every stroke you take, it offers a chance to improve upon it. Yeah, I mean, of course, that's true. And then he says, I'll read the next one too. However, being told over and over again that you have poor technique is often what creates a slow swimmer. I'm not so sure about that. I think if any coach is standing there telling someone over and over that they have poor technique, then that's just poor coaching. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Most coaches are there to help and to say, give you constructive criticism, which means they're going to say, okay, so what you're doing here is your elbows dropping and here's something you can do. But I have never met a coach that's just telling someone over and over again that the swimmer they're coaching has poor technique or that they're
maybe like, the middle school swimmer who's also the chemistry teacher and he kind of just signed up to coach swimming because, it has to do with water and chemistry or something like that, just kind of got thrown into this because it's part of my job. It's a Dr. Phil approach to coaching.
That's a good way to
you've
put
got a problem. I'm not going to tell you how to fix the problem, but you obviously have a problem.
Yeah.
And I agree with you there. It's he makes a very good point here that you have to, and I think a lot of people lose sight of this, especially in the second paragraph where he goes on to talk about you're not going to get faster if you do nothing but drills, and the same thing applies to running. When you're developing your running fitness, you do some running drills, but you also have to do some running.
Yeah.
But the point is you have to carry on what you learned in the drills into swimming. And I think a lot of people just say, I'm going to get faster doing drills. No, you have to take what you learned during the drills and the feel that you developed during the drills and actually incorporate it into your swim stroke. And, every single stroke, every single length, like you said, it's an opportunity for you to focus on technique. And I think a lot of swimmers let their mind wander and forget that.
Yeah, and I would also say that he compares it to running, but running is quite different. I mean, there is a lot involved with swimming. It is technical, and there is a lot of breakdown in the stroke, whereas running, there's definitely some technique involved, but it's not anywhere near the level of swimming. So, and plus we were kind of born to be runners, as that book says, but we were born to walk and run and do those things. We weren't really born to do a lot of swimming. So the learning curve is a lot steeper, and the getting that feel for the water is obviously a whole different thing than running. But I mean you gotta move on from drills. It's not all 100% drills, and that's a tough thing because if you're training by yourself, it's hard to know when to switch over and start doing more swimming. So it's better if if we're working with you, like we have a program in the Tri-Swim Success course where you can actually send your video, like get your friend or somebody to video you and then send it in to us, and we'll just kind of give you some pointers and show you what direction to go and give you some drills, some specific drills to do for wherever you are. So.
Yeah, and I think a better analogy would be to golf if we're going to stick with the sports analogy, just because both swimming and golf are so technique-based.
Yeah. And,
even like the pro swimmers, they get their swim stroke analyzed throughout practice and see how it develops, and then they get that feedback from their coach saying, you need to work on this, at the 800 meter mark of your 1,000, you're letting your elbow drop.
Right.
And it's similar to golf because they video analysis and then they go back and use that as feedback to improve, the next part of their practice. So the comparisons can be made, but unlike running, it's a lot more technique and constant feedback.
Exactly. All right. Do you want to take number one here?
Yeah, sure. So number one, he said, is ignoring distance per stroke. And he goes on in the paragraphs to follow saying that, there's a misconception with DPS or distance per stroke that it's all done at an easy effort. And he makes the argument that you need to go fast to create usable drag to make DPS work effectively. And this point, I can see what he's doing, and he actually gives a very good workout at the end, an example swim set. But I think he's missing the point of focusing more, and I would, instead of putting distance per stroke, I would say focusing more on distance per stroke rather than rotation, because I think the two are intermixed. I think with a lot of people are swimming flat in the water, and when they focus on distance per stroke, they're not working on their rotation to get more distance. Instead, they're reaching more with their arms, more with their shoulders, instead of rotating to get that better distance. So I think one of the reasons why people aren't swimming faster is because they're not seeing the link between distance per stroke and rotation. So to get faster, I would recommend focusing on that rotational component to get that extra distance so that you're not extending with your arm, but rather extending your whole body from the core.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I would add that instead of distance per stroke, I mean, distance per stroke is fine, but if you're on your own, again, it's like I'm kind of speaking to the solo swimmer, doing just distance per stroke, it might not make any sense. It's like, what are you trying to do? Are you kicking more? Are you just gliding more? That gets confusing for a lot of people. So I try to stay away from just distance per stroke sets. Instead, we'll work on counting your strokes. And that sort of just gets you an idea of where you are. And then you move from that to the swim golf, where you count your strokes and you get your time. You do a set of 50s and you count your strokes, get your time, and then you try to lower that number on each 50. Right. And that way you're kind of working on something. And you sort of intuitively figure out what you need to do next. Yeah, and I also wouldn't put distance per stroke as number one, because it is kind of a vague, or is it the word vague, or general kind of thing, as opposed to getting into more specific drills. But yeah, you're right. I like this workout. I mean, there's one thing. We'll link to this article in the show notes at triswimcoach.com. But it's also, I would say if you're looking for workouts, there's a few of them here that are pretty solid. So, all right. So number 2 is not going fast enough, which is interesting because the article is 5 reasons why you're not swimming any faster. So you're not swimming any faster because you're not going fast enough, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But we'll,
paradoxical.
Yeah, it's a little bit paradoxical. Yeah, but he says getting faster in the pool requires laser focus on technique and the ability to be okay with being uncomfortable. To get faster, you have to go faster than normal. If you know your technique is limited in an area, doing longer repeats early on isn't making you any better.
I love that. Yeah,
it's just reinforcing bad technique. So yeah, I mean, that's true. If you have some holes in your stroke or some flaws, and you just keep trying to improve or trying to increase your intervals, then that's going to be a problem, because you're just it's just completely reinforcing that. I totally agree with that. But yeah, then anyway, I'll finish this. The goal is to extend your new technique changes from shorter repeats to longer repeats at specific paces. Yeah, that's good. They're similar to running hill repeats. Yeah, it's funny because I agree with actually what he's saying, and I think it's a really good point. But it's just that you're not going to go faster by going faster. Like, that's really impossible. And
I wrote a blog on this a couple of weeks ago that doing 25-meter repeats is an excellent way to start out. There's no shame in just doing 25-meter repeats. And a lot of athletes, in the Facebook group say, I've got a half Ironman, I need to do longer sets. But if you're just starting out, even if you're doing a half Ironman or, focusing on an Ironman distance, if your form is off, nailing your form for each 25 is a lot better than doing a 500-meter straight. And that's why we break up our swim sets, is so that we can reset our form and recover so that we can hold form for longer sets. That's why we don't do continuous swims every single practice. So it's, I agree with him. You need to break up your form and have laser focus while you're swimming those smaller sets, and then build from there.
Yeah, right. And just to let all the listeners know, we're not trying to make fun of this article at all, because we actually agree with a lot of it, and we think he made some really good points. But we're just having fun. So
yeah, but also once again, the example swim set where he gives a bunch of 14 by 25 on 15-second rest, where the evens are distance per stroke and the odds are max effort. I think that's an excellent workout. Just 25s are you're focusing on rotation or doing swim golf, and then your odds are max effort. I think that's perfect, right? I think that's an awesome go-to swim set, especially if you're crunched for time.
Totally.
So number 3 is that you're swimming too tense. And I wrote an article on this that we just posted on our website for 3 stretches. And I agree that when you are a tense swimmer and your muscles are tense and your range of mobility isn't impeded, then you're not going to be able to swim fast, because you're not able to get the extension that you need. So if your shoulders are tight and your shoulders are tense and rounded forward as if you were in the aero position on your TT bike, then you definitely need to work on mobility and work on stretches to open up your shoulders so that you're able to move them in the way that you should and be able to get that full extension with that higher mobility. And if you're swimming tense, that's wasted energy right there. If you're tensing up your upper body, then that will impede your breathing, that will waste energy, and your breathing's going to be off. Rather than if you're swimming relaxed and smooth, that's going to be less energy. You're going to be swimming more efficiently. So working on loosening up your shoulders, opening up your shoulders with arm swings before you get into the water, that's going to help tremendously. And then also just reminding yourself to relax in the water, because if you do tense up, you're not going to be able to get the extension that you need to.
Befriend the water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the only thing I would point out here, I agree. I would say paddles. He says paddles can also create excessive hand tension that limits shoulder mobility. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't really like using a lot of paddles. There are some paddles that are really good, but I would say watch that. If you're one of those paddle addicts, just keep it to a minimum. And then,
especially if you have bad form, don't go. I would not touch paddles unless you're talking about the triangular ones from Finnis or a couple other companies. I would not touch paddles, especially like the dinner plate ones, unless you're a very experienced swimmer with good form, because they're going to strain your shoulders.
Exactly. So that was good stuff. So number 4 is no forward acceleration. So he says the biggest mistake athletes make is not creating forward motion with their trunk. However, the catch phase and forward acceleration go hand in hand. If your hand and elbow aren't anchored, your attempted body rotation will translate into wiggling down the lane. Swimming with a pull buoy between your shins is a tip I learned from an Olympic triathlon coach. I found that it forces the athlete to engage and utilize their core at all times. My athletes don't use paddles in the beginning of this process, as we try to ensure they are catching the water naturally. As the athlete progresses in competency and speed, we'll add a second buoy to add more drag. Yeah, I agree. I don't know the no forward acceleration. I think he did a good job in that paragraph in terms of explaining it and how it works. But I don't know if he's really addressing the acceleration, the forward acceleration. He's more addressing the hip rotation, right?
Mm-hmm. So going back to that first one, that first point that he was talking about. And as far as no forward acceleration, once again, he brings up paddles, and it's just this is where this point in particular is where he kind of loses me. Mm-hmm. But he does bring up an excellent point with the pull buoy between the ankles or the shins, and this doesn't really have to do with forward acceleration, but I'm glad he brought it up, because when you put a pull buoy between your ankles, or you keep it between your shins rather than keeping it in your groin or your quad area, it makes you hypersensitive to what your lower body is doing, so that if you're crossing over, you'll feel your legs swing back and forth. And if you're not rotating properly, or you're swimming flat in the water, you'll feel that, because the pull buoy will give you that extra, I wouldn't say momentum, but that extra feel for the water of what your lower body's doing. So I love the fact that he brought that extra, that tip in, but I don't really think it has to do with forward acceleration per se.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in that paragraph, and it's like there's really good points, but they're not all necessarily connected. Mm-hmm. So I think breaking it down and going, okay, so high elbow pull, rotation, and then just in that pull buoy example, I think those are the three kind of things there.
I think when he brings up no forward acceleration, I immediately thought he was going to talk about balance on the water, and how when your lower body begins to sink, then you're decreasing your forward acceleration because you're dragging yourself down. I thought he was going to go there, and I think that's another reason why people are not getting faster in the water, is because they're not balancing properly in the water.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I think for us, we would put that as number 1 or 2, mm-hmm. but I would say number 1. I've always taught the balance first, because that's where most people are lacking. And if you don't have that, if you're sinking, if your kick is, if your ankles are inflexible, all that stuff, that's going to really slow you down. And it's like you're kind of starting with an anchor, as opposed to, having no drag or very little drag. And then, but his last one is actually addressing something that's really important too. Yeah. Do you want to go for?
Sure. You're dropping your elbow, and we've harped on this many times on this podcast, many times on the blog. But I think I agree with him that this is one of the reasons why you're not getting faster. And I would have put this as number 1, is because you're dropping your elbow. And when you drop your elbow, you throw your body position off, and you're not gripping the water like you should and pulling yourself forward. So when you drop your elbow and kind of keep a flat arm as if you were scraping the bottom of the pool, you're not really propelling yourself forward as well as you could if you had a nice bend in your elbow.
Yeah, that's true. It is a really big issue. And then I think the second part is where this is important. He says, here are some common reasons why you might be dropping your elbows. And he says you have an airplane recovery phase. I'm actually not sure what that is, but...
Oh, it's where it's almost like if you were doing butterfly. So instead of dragging your fingertips, or bringing your arms straight over, you're bringing it over laterally. kind of like an airplane wing.
Yeah, so
I think that's what he means.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's kind of like the windmill style, which is actually okay. I don't teach that because it sets you up for just throwing your arms and dropping your elbows immediately. So I don't teach it, but you can actually get away with that if you really know what you're doing. So
it's more for sprints. If you look at the Olympic sprinters, like the 50-meter free, they do straight arm recovery, and it puts a lot of stress on your shoulders, but they're turning their arms over so quickly and they're done so quickly that it's not too much. It's not that big of an issue. But if you're doing an endurance swim, if you're doing a triathlon swim, it's not encouraged.
Right. And then the next one is entering the water too early. When an athlete's hand enters the water near their head and extends forward, the hand typically flips up, creating a stop effect. When your hand flips up, your elbow naturally goes down. Yeah, and some of this is interesting. That's kind of the total immersion way of doing it. Like you enter your hand by your head and then you extend it forward. And I used to teach that a little bit, but then it turned out that exact thing was happening. I see people pushing their hand down and then up, and then they do that stop thing. And that's definitely a great point.
And then the final one is your hand doesn't remain anchored down when traveling backwards. When your hand breaks to the side, the elbow will collapse. Not entirely sure what breaking to the side means, but if I interpret that correctly, I think he's referring to almost like an S curve, which you can do with a high elbow, but it doesn't make you faster.
Yeah,
it's better to have a straight pullback recovery. And there's a scientific study. Who funds these things? But there's a scientific study that the New York Times, believe it or not, published that showed that you're not creating any more drag or power by doing an S curve.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just the old school way of doing it, and it's and if you're pulling, most people, I haven't seen a lot of people that pull too far to the outside. Most people are coming in too far, if anything. So that usually isn't a huge problem, but that could also be a problem if you're trying to extend out a little bit too far. You might be putting pressure on your shoulders. Yeah,
and pushing yourself laterally in the water instead of straight forward.
Right, exactly, and that could cause problems when you're out in the open water as well. Yeah, so that's about it for the article. We're going to link to it in the show notes so you can check it out if you want and leave your comments. And we also have a free group. I don't know if we've announced that before on the podcast, but we have a free Facebook group. It's called Try Swim Coach Guppies, and you can look that one up. We've got a lot of people in there, and otherwise, is that it? I think that's about all we had. Did you have anything else to add, Chris?
Well, race season's right around the corner, so if you're focusing on especially a later season Ironman or half Ironman, now is the time to really start, doubling down on your swim. I know a lot of people were focusing on the bike and the run during the winter, especially doing that high intensity, VO2 max work. But now that, spring pretty much has sprung, touch wood, now might be the time to start focusing on the swim, especially if you've neglected it over the winter. So we can definitely help with that. Definitely reach out to us if you're struggling with a particular thing. We'd love to hear your voice, love to help you out to get you race ready, especially when it comes to the swim.
For sure. All right. Well, and if you can leave us a rating and review, a 5-star rating preferably on iTunes, that would be awesome. You just pull up iTunes, look for Try Swim Coach Podcast, and drop it in there, and we'll read it on the next show. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Had a great time on this one, Chris, and we'll look forward to the next one.
All right. Talk to you later, Kev.
All right. Have a good one, and have a great week of training, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to another episode covering swimming and triathlon mastery. To get your free online swim clinic, just go to tryswimlessons.com. Give us your name and email, and we'll have session number 1 off to you right away. Begin your process of befriending the swim and laughing at the water now.